This
Virtual
conference will now
Sennar.
be recorded.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Today, our meeting is going to be with a special guy, Toby. Hi, Toby. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Mohammed. Nice to meet you as well. Thank you very much for hosting this SolidWorks users group.
Really appreciate it.
I'm excited to be here and to share some tips and tricks from SolidWorks. As you know, I love SolidWorks, so always happy to share some tips and tricks and maybe answer some questions.
Yeah.
I like that color purple. That's a good color for that users group background. I think that looks
Very
really
cool.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Okay.
We have somebody from India here. We really have the globe covered just about.
Yeah. Okay. Today meeting is going to be about tips and tricks. A lot of people here in Sudan, like they ask me to provide a session about tips and tricks on SolidWorks. So they face like a lot of problems, so they want to improve themselves and like got like a good time, using SolidWorks. So the first guy that is coming to my mind like is Toby. So I invited him to come with us to give us this session. Okay, okay, sorry.
That's not my
And this
name.
is his, yeah. And this is your YouTube channel. You got like amazing content.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And amazing
Okay,
thumbnails
guys.
too. I made all those thumbnails, Mohammed. So when you see those
Yeah.
and you think, wow, these thumbnails, what is this? Arial bold? Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Arial
It's
bold.
quite unique, by the way. It's really unique.
Yep, very unique font. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. After the session, we got like a question and answering. So, Toby, feel free.
Okay. Thank you.
Present. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you for that intro. And I'm excited, very excited to be here. Very excited to talk about SolidWorks. I love SolidWorks, so this is where I get to have the most fun. So welcome everyone. And like Mohammed said, today we're going to talk about tips and tricks 2021. And I do have a YouTube channel as well, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. But let's get into it. And I don't know if you guys can hear the fan on my computer, but it is it's going a little bit nuts right now. I'm just gonna let it go, and if it gets too loud, it's really loud right now. Can you hear it at all, Mohammed? Can you hear this fan?
No, it's not obvious.
Okay, good. Then I'm gonna pretend it's not even happening. All right, well, let's go. Let's talk all about the wonderful world of SolidWorks. And what I'm going to share with you today is a presentation that I gave actually at at some other presentations in the past, at some other events in the past. But of course, we'll mix it up a little bit this time because we are going to do it live. And what we're going to try to do here is build this wire. So this is a pretty complicated wire. You can see it kind of comes across here, comes down, comes back this way, goes back around the other way and then down. It's kind of like a complicated shape. And whenever you get presented with a complicated shape, you want to ask yourself, how would I go about building this shape? And in this case, I think probably the answer is you would do this using a 3D sketch. I think that's the most common answer that I would get when presented with a challenge like this. But not everybody has the skills to do 3D sketching efficiently, right? If we were to go in here and start a new part and say that we're going to make this part a 3D sketch. We would go up here to sketch mode, we'd fly out this menu and say we want to do 3D sketch. Not everybody really knows how to get in here and make a 3D sketch, and then you got to press the tab key on your keyboard, you got to come down at an angle. Now you got to try and figure out how you're going to make that arc. It can be a little bit tricky if you're not an expert in 3D sketching, and it can be very tricky to figure out how to get this thing locked down as well. 3D sketching is not exactly easy, and look, I didn't even get what I wanted. That's really not what I was hoping for. It didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. So instead, when I look at a shape like this, what I think to myself is, wouldn't it be easier to create a shape like this, right? If we were going to create a shape like this, it would be very easy. We would just do maybe a boss extrusion of a tombstone shape, an arc, a line, an arc. We would maybe do a cut extrusion to create this little downward sloping area, and then we would create this little rectangular area up top. Well, what's cool about SolidWorks is that if you create this geometry, you can then use that geometry to generate that complicated wire, that complicated sweep. And this is something I've done many times in the past, and I find it to be a much more elegant solution than trying to sit there and fight with 3D sketch mode. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to show you how to make this kind of complicated wire, but I'm going to show you how to do it using extrusions and cuts rather than a complicated 3D sweep. Now, along the way, I just want to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, feel free to ask them. You can either type them into the chat, or you can ask your questions, just put yourself on audio and just say, excuse me, I have a question. I love doing live presentations because every time it's a little different. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat or just speak up, and I am happy to answer any questions you might have. So again, just for, I see a couple of new people came in. Just as a review, what we're going to do is we're going to try to build this part, this complicated 3D sketched wire part, but we're going to do it using some of Toby's favorite tips and tricks. So we're going to start out here by going to a new part. Now we have to choose our template, and of course you have these out-of-the-box templates, part assembly drawing, but I like to create some templates that maybe have some materials and some units specified here, just to make the process a little bit easier. So I like to go through and create my own templates, and in this case I'm just going to make this out of plain carbon steel, and I'm going to do this using millimeters. So plain carbon steel and millimeters. And now I'm going to go to the top plane and I'm going to begin a sketch. And what I'm going to utilize here is a little trick that I like to use called auto dimension in sketch mode, which means that when I begin sketching, you can see here that the mouse, above the mouse, there's a dimension input. And if I type in a value there, 160, and I press enter, now that sketch is fully defined. I right away was able to get in and create an auto dimension as I was creating the sketch. And the way that this works is we go into our options here, and in our options, there's a section for sketch. And what we do is we turn on these two options here. So this is when you go into sketch mode, you turn on these two options, enable on-screen numeric input and create dimension only when a value is entered. And if you turn on those two options, that's going to give you the ability to do this automatic dimensioning whenever you're creating sketches. And this is a great time saver in SolidWorks because you don't have to go back and re-add the dimension, and because you know right away that you're sketching at the correct size. So there's really two benefits there. Now, the next thing I want to show you is that when we're sketching in SolidWorks and we're sketching lines like this, we can create what's called a tangent arc right off of the end of the line. So what that means is when I begin the line command here, I could come over, I could come up, then I can come back and just put my mouse over that endpoint. So you see, I didn't click anything, I didn't start a new command, and that took me into what's called tangent arc command. So I come over here, I come back, I hold my mouse over the endpoint, and that puts me into what's called tangent arc command. Now, the cool thing about this is that the tangent arc can go off in any direction that you want, and you also get the auto dimension function that I mentioned before. So as I'm creating this tangent arc, you can see here that what I could do is I could type in, say, 35, enter, and now I'm going to have a dimension right on that tangent arc. So if we put those two skills together, what we end up with here is a line that comes over at 160, enter. Now I'm going to move away from that endpoint, come back and touch the endpoint. Now I'm going to come down. I'm going to type in my radius here, which is 60, enter. And then I'm going to be able to create this arc that comes down to 60 is fully defined, and I'll be able to close off this sketch like so. Now, the one thing that we didn't get here is we didn't get a tangency relationship between these two. But another little shortcut that you can use is you can hit escape, and then you can click on this endpoint and then just go right to make tangent. And now you can see that we've got a nice fully defined sketch in SolidWorks. And that's always what we want. We always want our sketches to be fully defined when we're working in SolidWorks. So now that I've got that fully defined sketch ready to go, kind of the foundation of this part that I'm going to be creating, because remember, instead of creating the part like this, like a 3D sketch, we're going to create it like this. So now that I've got that kind of foundation created, what I'm going to do is perform an extrude command. So I'm going to take this sketch and I'm going to jump right into the extrude command. And what I'm doing here is I'm pressing S on my keyboard, the letter S, right on my keyboard. And what the letter S does is it brings up what's called a shortcut menu. And you see that I've used this a couple of times already. And what I can do is I can actually customize this menu. So when we customize this menu, what that means is we can add and remove buttons from this menu. It's very helpful because all the commands you want to use most frequently can just show up here right on this S key menu. So in this case, I'm in sketch mode. I press S, I go to extrude, and now I'm able to take this right into the extrude command. And when we're in the extrude command, we can also use some shortcuts. Like one of my favorite shortcuts is I don't move my mouse anymore. I just immediately start typing. So I'm going to type in 60, enter, and then enter one more time. And now I have completed that extrusion. So now we've completed that boss going up to the desired height there. So those are some good shortcuts to remember, and I'll review some of these shortcuts at the end. But for now, what I'm going to do is go on to my next sketch. What I want to do next here is I want to create this kind of over, down, over shape, this kind of angled cut in this original shape that I created. So to do that, I'm going to pick this face, begin a sketch, orient my view, and I'm going to press the S key again, begin a line command. I'm going to bring a line over here. I'll use my auto dimensioning again. I'll type in 30 for the length of that line. I'm going to come down here at an angle, and then I'm going to have another line that comes over here and kind of pick up on this end line here, like so. And then I'm going to use my dimension command. So again, I'm using S. I'm just pressing the letter S on my keyboard. I'm going to use my dimension command to create a dimension here at 30. And then finally, I'm going to create a dimension here. Now, I want this angle to be, I want it to be 30 degrees basically this way, but I want the dimension to be over here. And something that I always remind people about is that when you click out here in space with your dimension command, you can type in equations right in that dimension box. So for example, I could type in 180 minus 30. Now I know that's a pretty easy formula to calculate, but there's a lot of other things you can do in this dialog box to save yourself some time when you're working in SolidWorks. If you just need to take like a little bit of material off of your design, you could just type in your value 10 minus 0.25, or whatever it happens to be. Maybe sometimes the calculations are a little more complicated than that. But in this case, I'm going to do 180 minus 30, enter, and we see that that gives us another nice fully defined sketch. We can always look down here in what's called our status bar to make sure that the sketches are fully defined, and that's very important. You always want your sketches to be fully defined. So now that I've got that sketch created, what I can do is S key, and I can jump into the cut extrude command. And when I jump into the cut extrude command here, what I'm going to say is I want to cut extrude through all in both directions. Now, this is another good trick in SolidWorks that a lot of people aren't aware of. And what this is when you do a cut extrude with an open sketch, like this sketch here, I did not close this sketch off. It's just a line, an angled line, and another line. Nothing was ever closed off. Basically, what this does is a surface cut, and it's going to go in the direction of this arrow right here. So this arrow is saying it's going to remove everything from the bottom of this model. Well, that's not what I want. So I want to use what's called flip side to cut. And now that arrow is pointing up. So this arrow here is pointing up, which means I'm going to remove everything from the top of this model. And that's what I want to do. So I hit the green check mark, and we can see we were able to do a cut extrude through all in both directions. So this is another, really useful skill to know about when it comes to working in SolidWorks and being able to, just quickly create your geometry without having to create a bunch of additional lines or anything. We were able just to leave that sketch open and then do a cut through all in both directions. So I made a couple of features. I don't want to lose my work. I don't know if you guys have ever crashed SolidWorks before. I know that I have crashed SolidWorks once or twice. So I don't want to lose my work. So I'm going to save my model. And the way I'm going to save is I'm going to press Control and the letter S. So you can see up here, if I hold my mouse over the save command, it says Control S. So I do, Control and the letter S. That lets me save. And now that I've got Control and the letter S, what I'm going to do is save this thing as, a new name. So I'll call this new wire part and enter. So I save that model. And now I'm going to come over to the tree and I'm going to rename my features. I think it's always useful to rename your features to make it a little easier for you to look at this model later, and also for your teammates, your coworkers, to look at this model later. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to rename this. I'll rename this first feature here. And the way I do my renames is I press F2 on my keyboard. F2, sorry, I know it's upside down. F2 on my keyboard. So I click on the name of the feature, I press F2, and now I'm going to call this one, I'll call this one Arc Base, enter. And then I'm going to go to this next feature, press F2, and I'll call this one Angled Cut, enter. And now my hands are already on the keyboard, so now I'm going to press Control S once again, Control and the letter S, and that lets me save that model again. So, make a couple of features, rename, save. Everything, your hands are on your keyboard already, so it's a great tool to remember to use. And Matthew in the chat says he also likes renaming the features. Renaming, I think, is very important. Most of the models that I create, you'll see, when I'm done creating them, the features will all be renamed. If we look at a model like this is a model that I made a couple of years back to help with a design for a GoPro here. And if I take this model here and I open it up, you can see that all the features in the tree are renamed. So everything over here, rename, rename, rename. Oh, not this one, just ignore that one. This one here, rename, rename. So all the features are renamed, and it makes it very easy when you've got a complicated model like this. If I want to figure out where the lens is, you can see it makes it very easy for me to figure out where those features are. So always a good habit. Get in there and rename your features, and it'll make things easier for you, and it'll make things easier for other people as well. All right, so getting back to our model here, what we're going to do next is we're going to create this upper shape. So I'm going to pick this face here, begin a sketch, orient my view, and I'm going to create a rectangle. So I did the S key there, once again, S key, rectangle. And I'm going to pick this point here and move my mouse, and then I'm going to take my hand off the mouse and I'm going to type in the dimensions for the rectangle. So maybe this comes over 25, and maybe it sticks out 45. I'm going to go a little crazy with this one and have it stick out over the edge there. And then I'm going to do S key extrude, and I'm going to bring that up to whatever the height is supposed to be, let's say 25 millimeters up. So I think that looks pretty good. I think that's going to put us into a good spot. I'm going to click this feature, rename it top rectangle, Control S for save. All right, and I'm ready now to move on to create what's called my 3D sketch. Now, this is an approach that I very much like to use. I think it's great to get in there and do, kind of like a base shape and then use 3D sketch over top of that base shape. So I'm going to go here to my sketching tools and choose 3D sketch. And then what I'm going to do is pick this edge and this edge, this edge and this edge, this edge and this edge, this edge and this edge and this edge. And then I'm going to do what's called a convert entities. And so we can see here, it's a little bit easier to see if I turn off edges in shaded mode. We can see what we ended up with there, right? We took that sketch, we took all those edges, and we just converted them into our 3D sketch. So we took this edge here, the angled edge, this edge here, this. And basically what we did was we set ourselves up to do a sweep. And what's kind of cool here is that in SolidWorks, if you're in sketch mode and you go to the fillet command, which I don't use that often, usually I will fillet at the feature level, but I think it's very appropriate here. If I go to the fillet command, what I can do is I can say I want these to be a fillet value of say 8 millimeters, and then I can just put a window around the entire sketch. And anywhere that there's a sharp corner, SolidWorks is going to put in a radius for me. SolidWorks is going to put in a sketch fillet for me. So I think that looks pretty good. I'm going to hit the green check mark, and yeah, I think we're pretty much ready. That's basically going to be our sweep path. So I'm going to exit that sketch. I'm going to rename that to sweep path. And I think we're good to go here. So let's say I'm going to pick this face here, begin a sketch. I'm going to sketch a circle. I'll put the circle here like so. I'll give it a diameter. So again, using auto dimension, I'm going to make this a diameter here of 10 millimeters. And maybe that's a little bit big. Let's make that 6 millimeters. I like that more. And then I'm going to exit that. That would be our sweep profile. And then I'm going to go to features, and I'm going to choose to sweep that profile along that path. And look at that, that's looking pretty good. That's going to basically give us our wire. So we hit the green check mark, and okay, it looks okay. I think there's maybe a little problem here. It looks like, yeah, it kind of merged into the original design. So not exactly what we wanted. Close, but not exactly what we wanted there. So let's say we're going to delete that feature. So I'm going to go over here to the tree, and I'm going to click on that sweep, and I'm going to press delete on my keyboard. Now, if we use delete on the keyboard, so if you press delete here, you can see here that the feature will be deleted from the tree. The feature here is going to be completely deleted from the tree. It's going to go away. It never existed. So I'm going to say yes, delete that. And I'm also going to delete my sweep profile. I see that Yaya and Krishna are both saying, why don't you use the Yaya? Thank you, Yaya. I see Yaya and Krishna are both saying, why don't you use the circular profile? I think that's a great suggestion. Yes, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. So I'm going to get rid of the sweep profile sketch as well. So again, I press delete on my keyboard, and the sweep profile goes away. So that was an example of using delete on the keyboard. But there's another way that we can delete in SolidWorks, and that is by going to the command insert features delete. Now, this is different from delete on the keyboard, because when we do delete on the keyboard, the feature goes away. The feature's gone like it never existed. But when we use the command insert features delete, what we can do is we can make a new feature in the tree that gets rid of this solid body. So I hit the green check mark, and I get rid of the solid body. So the solid body was there. There's the solid body. There's the solid body. Then I used the solid body to make the path, and then I deleted the solid body. So here we see a new feature was created to delete the solid body. And that's really what we want to do. If we just delete with our keyboard, it's not going to help us, because the solid body will, the whole tree will be gone. But if we delete the solid body there, now what we can do is we can go to sweep boss base. We can say that we want to use circular profile, and let's make that 6 millimeters. And then we can choose our 3D sketch for our path. Hey, look at that. That's looking pretty good, right? And once we get that in place, now we can go to the command insert features mirror, right? Or sorry, insert pattern mirror, mirror. Usually I just get it from here, mirror. And we can say we want to mirror about this face. And we're just going to mirror the entire body. Just mirror this whole body here. And there we go. And that's our complicated wire there. You know, simplified greatly because we were able to utilize that simple geometry. You know, everybody can make this. Everybody can make this. Everybody can make this. And once you have that geometry in place, you can generate this. And it's just kind of a cool approach to, you know, create a complicated, you know, what looks like a complicated 3D sketch, but to do it using very simple geometry. Now, I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually try to make it a little more complicated because, you know, what's neat about this approach is that it is parametrically sound, right? If I change this from 160 to 180 in the original shape, we can see that when we rebuild, the new shape updates. It's pretty cool. And so we could even go back here and maybe make something a little more complicated. Like let's say I want to add some draft to this feature here. So I'm going to go draft and I'm going to say I want to add some draft here to this face so that this face tips in by 20 degrees. So that's kind of cool, right? Now we're going to have a compound angle in our 3D sketch. Maybe if we really wanted to challenge the system here, we could say we want it to be on both of these faces, right? So now that's going to update our 3D sketch, and ultimately it's going to update our sweep, right? Wait a second here. So I got this, got the draft, delete the body, then the sweep. I'm going to do Control 5. Control 5 changes me to top view. Actually, all these Control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all your standard views. So Control 5. So what's going on there? That should be tipped in, right? Straight. Then it's drafted there. But then it's not drafted there. Huh. So what's going on here? Well, what's happening here is this is what's known as understanding the true order of the tree, the true solve order of the tree. Because what we can see here is that we have our sweep path, but our sweep path is actually being solved here. Our sketch for the sweep path is actually being solved here before the draft. Now, how do I know that? I only know it because I did this presentation before. But the way that you can find that out is you can right mouse button at the top of the tree, and from the right mouse button, you can go in here to tree display and you can say show flat tree view. And when we say show flat tree view, this shows us the true order in which things are being solved. And so we can see right here is the problem. The sweep path is being solved first, and then the draft is being solved second. So that's right mouse button up at the top, show tree display, show flat tree view. And Yaya is pointing out in the chat as well, you can also do Control T. So Control and the letter T shows you the flat tree view as well. And so we can see here that the problem is the top rectangle is being solved, and then that sweep path is being created. I'll show the sweep path. You know, another thing that I'll sometimes do with sketches is I'll do a right mouse button and I'll say sketch color. And then I'll change that to something that like really pops out. Like if it's hard to see that gray, I'll change it to something like a purple that'll really pop out for me. So then I made the sweep path and then I made the draft. So now we see what the problem is. So what we need to do is take that sweep path and drag it down below the draft. And there we go. That's what we wanted. Now we delete that solid body. Now we do our sweep. And now we end up with what we wanted. So I'll hide that sketch. And if we do a Control 5 again, go to the top view, look at that. That's a pretty cool shape. And that's a shape that I think would be kind of complicated if you were trying to create it using 3D Sketch. So we'll rename this one, delete main body. We'll rename this one sweep wire, and we'll rename this one here to mirror all. We'll do Control S for save, and I think that's pretty much it. Maybe we'll put the flat tree back, so Control T, put that flat tree back to normal tree view, just a little bit easier to visit. And I see Leonard Tyndall is here. What's up, Leonard? Thanks for tuning in. Welcome, welcome. So now what I'm going to do is one final tip for this thing. This is just a little something I like to do because I do a lot of presentations, is I like to take this this view that I made, this nice cool wire view, and I want to add it in here to a PowerPoint. You know, I want to drop in that view of that wired part and drop it right in here to this PowerPoint. So let's hit escape here. So now we're looking at the PowerPoint. We want to drop in that view here. Well, what we can do is just a couple of quick little things in SolidWorks to get a very nice view of this wired part. So first of all, what we can do is we can pick through our different scenes. You can see you've got your three-point shaded view. You've got this backdrop view here. You know, I think these are all fine, but I feel like the best one, the one I've had the most luck with, is just plain white. So we get plain white to look good here. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Next thing that we could do is we could maybe go into our view options, and from view, we could go to display tangent edge. And so you've got tangent edges visible, tangent edges with phantom, and tangent edges removed. So if I do tangent edges removed, you can see that that gets rid of all those tangency locations on each of these faces, makes it look like one continuous bent wire. We can also go in here to our view options and we could say hide show all by clicking on the eyeball, or we could go through and pick things that are shown that we don't want to see. So for example, I might not want to see this origin here in the PowerPoint. So maybe I would just go here to view and turn off the origin. Or the other thing that I could do is just hide show all by clicking on the eyeball. Either one works great. And then finally, we can go in here to our view option for perspective. And you can see here in our view option for perspective, we can just make that look a little more realistic by adjusting the perspective. Now, if we really want to go crazy, we can start adjusting the lights, adjusting the shadowing, but I don't think that's necessary. I think usually I just do this: real view graphics, shadows and shaded mode, ambient occlusion, and perspective. If you just have those things turned on, you should be pretty much set up for this next step. And what the next step is File, Save As. And when we go into File, Save As here, we're going to choose to change this to a PNG. So here you see you've got your portable network graphic PNG. And then when we go to options, we can see here in options, there's an option for remove background. I like that. So I'm going to say okay, and I'll call this one new wire part dash rendered. Even though I didn't really render it, I'm just taking a quick PNG right from the SolidWorks interface. I'm going to say save. And now what happens is this shows up here in Microsoft Photo Viewer. I'm going to do a right mouse button and copy. And now I'm going to go back into PowerPoint and I'm going to do a Control V or a paste. And you can see here that the background is removed. So I still have the shadow from that part. The shadow shows up as transparent. The full background shows up as transparent. And it just makes it look great. You know, if you're taking this and showing this to clients, this is a very effective way of delivering your presentation. You can get it in there quick and easy. And now we've got this final rendered part. We can say, you know, what do you think? Does this look better? Does this look pretty cool? And it's just like a nice, quick, easy way that you can go from SolidWorks into PowerPoint, remove the background, have the rendering look okay. You know, it's not visualized, it's not key shot, but it still looks pretty darn good. And if you're just doing quick reviews with your customers, this is a great way to get your content into PowerPoint with transparency. So that's it for our first example. And I know it may seem like we only really covered one part, but what you can see here is if we go into our what we actually covered here in this first section, we really covered a lot of different tips and tricks, right? We covered how to go into sketch mode and switch from line to tangent arc and do that even doing perpendicular to that line. We talked about how you can use basic equations inside of the modify spin box when you're doing dimensions. We talked about how you can do a cut extrude through all in both directions from an open sketch. We talked about how you can do save and you can use F2 to rename, and then you can do Control S for the regular save command again. We talked about how you can do convert the edges of a solid so that you can create your geometry using very simple geometry and then convert that into a 3D sketch to use for a sweep or a loft. We didn't talk about Control Z undo. It's another one of my favorites. Control Z for undo is another really good one there. We also talked about how you can use what's called delete solid body, insert features delete, so you can get rid of that solid body but still use its geometry for something downstream. We showed how you can do a sweep with a profile sketch using that circular profile option, so you don't even need to create a profile sketch. We talked about how you can do a mirror body, and that is kind of like doing a mirror all. We talked about how you can use Control 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 to switch to all your standard views. We talked about how you can use Control T for flat tree view. And in the end there, we talked about using Save as PNG to remove the background. So a lot of tips there, even though we only really built that one single part. Mohammed Hisham says, nice trick, but it's time consuming and it's time consuming, and in complicated parts, it took a long time to rebuild, more than a 3D sketch, isn't it? I don't know about that. I mean, it depends. Everything depends on the situation. There's a tool for every job, that's for sure. But I think that the time consuming part of fully defining a 3D sketch would have to be balanced against the time consuming part of, you know, doing it this way. I think it's much easier to define your 2D sketches, and it gives you a lot of flexibility when it comes to making changes. You know, some people just aren't good at 3D sketching yet, and this at least lets those people create that kind of foundational geometry. So it's a good point. You know, the other question is this more time consuming than a 3D sketch? The way that we can find that out is we could build the model using both techniques, and then we can go in here to evaluate, and we can choose performance evaluation. And what this shows us is the total duration of rebuild for the model. So you can see here that this model took 0.14 seconds to rebuild. So we could do the same thing using a 3D sketch start to finish, and then we could check what the rebuild time is there as well and see which one takes longer to rebuild. So I like the way you're thinking about that one, Mohammed. You know, you always want to think what's going to take longer to rebuild, but it's also a matter of what's going to be easier to edit. And again, if you're not good at 3D sketching, this just might be an easier approach just easier to build to begin with. Let's see here, Control 7 gives you ISO view, rebuild, and save. Control 7, Control Q, Control S. Yep, that's a great point. I do that a lot, Matthew. So like in this case, I'll do Control 7, then I'll do a Control Q, and then I will do a Control S. So ISO view, rebuild, and then save. So that's a great point as well.
Toby, to back you up on the methodology, also as a CSWE, the way Toby's doing this sets you up for a way more robust way to drive change, like through a design table. If we advance this, avoiding inverted tangencies, 3D sketches, man, you start driving those in more complex ways, like for product families, production models, seed models. Stuff can go sideways quickly, where the way he's doing it off of a solid is very robust.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you for that, Matthew. So what Matthew's saying is that if we were to create another configuration of, say, this element of the design here, where we've got this 45 dimension. So let's say we right mouse button on that dimension and say configure dimension. So now we're going to say version 2, version 3, version 4. And then we're going to change that dimension in each of those different variations. So for version 2, we're going to make this 75. For version 3, we're going to make it 95. And for version 4, we're going to make it 115. What we would see here is this this value here, you know, this line here jumping out. Now we're going to bring it back a little bit. Now we're going to bring it back a little bit more, or bring it out a little bit further. Oh, I spelled this wrong. Vergio. Okay, there we go, version 3. So, you know, what we end up with here is a real potential hazard with regards to this tangency here and this tangency here. You know, when you're in just straight 3D sketch mode, if you try to bring that out to be, you know, that longer version where you've got that tangency and then you've got the tangency here, in 3D sketch mode, a lot of times that has a tendency to invert, where you end up with something more like this. And it can be very frustrating when those types of things happen. And they do tend to happen more, you know, like Matthew said, in 3D sketch mode, where if you're just doing everything in 2D sketch, it just makes it a lot more robust, a lot less likely that you're going to run into those types of issues. So yeah, absolutely. Great point. Thanks for that, that idea. Yeah. And then Krishna said, couldn't get real-time graphics option using RTX 2060. I mean, the main thing that's happening right now with anything graphics related, kind of like the go-to right now, is go down into performance and toggle this option, the enhanced graphics performance, toggle that on and off. That's like the big kind of go-to right now in SolidWorks. So toggle that off, restart SolidWorks, see if the issue goes away. It seems like if you don't have exactly the right driver for the version of SolidWorks that you're using, you can run into a lot of issues if you have that toggled on. So just something to look out for. Other than that, it would just be a matter of you know, continuing to troubleshoot. You know, that's all I can say about that one. Okay, cool. All righty. All right, I think we caught up on most of the chat there. So that's it for that example. I think we have a few extra minutes here. So Mohammed, if it's all right with you, I'll show one more example. But I did want to say one other thing here, which is that I do have a YouTube channel here called Too Tall Toby, and a lot of these tips that I just mentioned are shown on there, like the R key. You know, one of the things that I did during that presentation was I was able to quickly bring up that example of the GoPro. Well, that's just because I pressed R on my keyboard. And when I press R, it shows me my recently accessed documents. It's a great way to save some time. And it's something that I have outlined on my YouTube channel in what's called power moves. Some of those other power moves that we talked about in the video today are things like auto dimension in sketch mode. So we went through, I showed you how to do that, like type in the dimension value. Well, this video explains how to set that up and how to use it effectively. How to use the end conditions, some of the end conditions that I did there, like cut extrude and boss extrude, you know, another great time saver there. And how to use the S key in SolidWorks. One of my favorite commands in SolidWorks is the S key. And I've got a video on there that explains how to do that as well. So if you look at my YouTube channel, Too Tall Toby, what you'll see here is there's a section called Power Moves. It's a playlist. There's a bunch of these power moves. If you just watch one of them every day and practice those, they're really meant just to save you a lot of time and a lot of effort. And Travis says, S key and delete face are my favorite keys. Well, Travis, you are in luck because we're going to talk about delete face here in just a moment. Another one of my favorite tools as well. So Mohammed, do we have time to do another like 10, 15 minutes?
Sure, go ahead.
All right.
Feel free.
Cool,
Yeah.
awesome. So we're gonna now talk about a different model, and with this model, what we're going to do is we're going to actually import a file and make some changes. So in this case, we're going to be working with a file which is not a traditional CAD file, or not a SolidWorks file. So let me close this model here, and we're going to go to Open. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to open up an imported model. So we're not going to open up a SolidWorks model. We're going to open up an imported model of a bracket. So here we can see we're opening up this. This is an IGES file. When we open it up, it says, do you want to run import diagnostics on this part? I always say yes to this question. Do you want to run import diagnostics on this part? Different people say different things, but before I actually bring in this model here, before I say yes or no to this, what I want to point out is this icon in the tree. And this icon in the tree here, it looks kind of like a part file, like a part file like that, and then it's got an arrow pointing, whoops, pointing the arrow the wrong way. It's got an arrow pointing off to the side. That icon means that this model is using what's called 3D interconnect. So 3D interconnect. And 3D interconnect is a very useful, very powerful tool in SolidWorks for bringing in models from a different CAD system, imported models. It can also make things open much more quickly because of what it's doing in the background. But we're not going to use 3D interconnect for this example. I want this to open up as a traditional IGES import. So I'm going to close this model. I'm going to go to options. I'm going to go to import, and I'm going to say, don't use 3D interconnect. So I cleared that box. Don't use 3D interconnect. I love 3D interconnect. I think it's great. I'm not telling you to turn it off. I'm just telling you for this example, I'm going to turn it off because I want this to import as a traditional IGES import. So I go here to this bracket again and open it. And when we open it this time, we're going to see the tree is going to look a little different. Now we see it looks more like a traditional IGES import where it's got the block with the hole in it. You can tell I'm pretty good at drawing freehand, right? I really specialize in that. All of my drawings freehand really come out good. So here it says, do you wish to run import diagnostic on this part? I usually say yes to this. If it's a super complicated model, this can slow you down. But for smaller models like this bracket, it's a good idea to make sure that the model is in good shape. So I say yes to this. It says it found a faulty face. I'm going to say attempt to heal all. And now there's no longer any faulty faces. If you leave faulty faces in your model, you'll end up with an error like failed due to geometry condition, and it can be frustrating. So I always go through and import and do import diagnostics. I've talked to people who say they sometimes don't do that one, but I always do that. I always say import diagnostics, yes. Now, this next thing here is saying, do you want to proceed with feature recognition? This is a tool called FeatureWorks. It's available in SolidWorks, I believe SolidWorks Professional. And this is a pretty cool tool. It lets you unbuild the model. I've had a lot of success, a lot of luck with FeatureWorks. I actually really like FeatureWorks. I'm not going to use it this time, but for me, Toby, I like FeatureWorks. Just my personal preference. I do like it. I've had a lot of luck with it, but I'm not going to use it for this example either. Let's see here. Mohammed is asking, is there a lag in screen sharing? Probably a slight lag. I'm watching what the audience is seeing, and it looks like it's keeping up. But I'll try to leave the dialog boxes up for a little longer to compensate for that lag. So now I've got this model here, and I want to do something with this model. Right? I want to change it from revision 1 to revision 2. So what do I need to do to this model to change it from revision 1 to revision 2? Well, what I need to do is I need to change the diameter of this hole. I need to change the radius, this radius up top here. I need to get rid of the fillet down here. I need to change the height. Make sure this radius down here is 3, and I need to remove this rib altogether. So there's a few different ways that you could go about making these changes, but the way that I'm going to make these changes is I'm going to just use some traditional face editing tools that we have in SolidWorks. And the face editing tools that I'm going to use here are going to be things like insert face move, insert face delete, things like that. So I'm going to say view display, just kind of clean up my display a little bit. I want to see where all the different options are. Yaya just confirmed for me, FeatureWorks is available in all versions of SolidWorks. All right, thanks a lot, Yaya, I appreciate that. Okay, so FeatureWorks is available for everybody. So maybe in the future we can do a users group where we talk about FeatureWorks and why Toby likes FeatureWorks, because everybody else seems to hate FeatureWorks, but I actually like it. I've had a lot of luck with it. So maybe we can talk about how I use it sometime in the future. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some commands that are available to you in SolidWorks. And in regular SolidWorks, one of my favorite commands is insert face move. Insert face move. Now, what insert face move lets us do is it lets us take an entire face and offset it to a specified distance. So in this case, I'm going to offset this by 3 millimeters. And what I'm doing here is I'm taking that hole and I'm making that hole smaller in diameter. Now I'm going to do Control Z for undo. You know, when I was first getting started with SolidWorks, if I needed to make this hole smaller, what I would do is I would pick this face, begin a sketch, do a convert entities, do a second circle here in the middle, and then give that circle the diameter that I need. You know, I want that to be 12 millimeters. And then I would extrude it. Right? I'm sure many of you have done something similar here. If you get an imported model and you need to make that hole smaller, maybe you have done something like that. But that's not what I'm going to do here. Instead, I'm going to do this using the command insert face move. So I'm doing a Control Z here for undo, get myself back to just having one feature in the tree. Now my goal here is to take that diameter and make it 12 millimeters. But I don't know what the diameter is currently. And what many people would do is they would go into the command measure and they would pick on this face here. So you go measure from the evaluate, pick on this face, and it tells you what the current diameter is. The current diameter is 16 millimeters. But I almost never use measure because quite often that information is available down here in the status bar. So you can see there in the status bar, all I did was click on the face and the status bar tells me the diameter is 16. Right? If I want to know the distance from this face to this face, I can hold Control, pick those two faces, and the status bar tells me the distance is 7 millimeters. So I almost never use measure. And instead, whenever I can, I rely on the status bar. If you pick a curved edge, the status bar will sometimes tell you the radius. It depends on if the radius came through clean. Unfortunately, in this case, it didn't. Let me see if I can pick a different face here where it did come through clean. Here we go. So I picked this face. And we can see the status bar tells me the radius is 3 millimeters. If you pick just an edge, you know, if I picked, say, this edge right here, the status bar tells me the length of that edge. If I want to know how wide this part is, I could pick this face, hold Control, pick this face, and the status bar tells me how wide those are. So the status bar is incredibly useful for measuring, and it is a huge time saver in SolidWorks when you need to quickly figure things out. So in this case, if I click on this diameter, the diameter is 16. I want the diameter to be 12, so I'm going to go to the command insert face move, and I'm going to pick on this face here, and I'm going to say I want to offset that face, offset by a distance of 2 millimeters. Because it's going to be 2 on each side. So I'm going to go from 16 down to 12. Hit the green check mark, make sure I did my math right, and we can see here diameter is 12. So we'll rename that one, move face, 12 millimeter hole. And then we can go on to the next change that we are assigned to make. And the next change is we need to remove this fillet. So this is going to become a straight edge here. Remove this fillet. All right, that one should be pretty easy. We're going to go to the command insert face delete. And what insert face delete does when you use this command here, delete and patch, what it does is it takes this surface here and it extends it down, and it takes this surface here and it extends it out. And so these two surfaces get extended and come together at a new intersection where this face originally was. So if I hit the green check mark, that face got extended down, that face got extended over, and now we have a nice sharp edge there. And that's what we want, insert face delete. It's actually a surfacing command, believe it or not. But it's, in this case, with an imported model, it's a great way to get rid of fillets. And I can tell this fillet here like didn't really come in clean. When I click on it, I'm not getting a measurement down in the status bar. I'm not getting a radius down here. So this fillet didn't really come in clean. This fillet here didn't really come in clean. You know, my job here is to create a 3 millimeter fillet down there and a 3 millimeter fillet up here. So, you know, this is another spot where maybe what I would do is insert face delete. And when I do insert face delete, what I could do is I could say I want to delete this and this as well. And then I could just go back in with a regular fillet, right? And I could add in a fillet here at 3 millimeters on this edge and on this edge. I think that's pretty cool. I think that makes it pretty easy to take that imported model and make some changes to that imported model. Now, before I add that fillet, I think the other change I want to make is I want to change this height here to 17. So 17 millimeter height here, next change that I need to make. So I'm going to make that change by going to the command insert face move. And in this case, I could do an offset of that face. I could also do a translate of that face. With translate, you can grab your X, Y, and Z, and you can use that to move. That's pretty helpful when you're trying to relocate a hole. So if, for example, I didn't want this hole to be going right down the center, I could take this and move it over a little bit and then move it this way a little bit, kind of offset it if that's what you needed to do. It's a very easy way to accomplish that. But that's not what I'm going to be doing here. I'm going to be taking this top face, and I'm going to be moving this top face up. But before I can do that, I need to know what that distance is currently. So the current distance between these two, 7 millimeters. The new distance is going to be 17 millimeters. So I'm going to do insert face move. And by the way, these are also available, right from the right mouse button command. If you go into right mouse button on a face, you got your face commands here. Actually, where's my? Here we go, face commands, and then we can go into move. So you can get to them from there. You could also, if you're doing this a lot, you could do S key, right mouse button, customize, and then you could go in here to your face commands, which are probably under what? This one's probably under surfaces. Is that where our delete face is going to be? There's delete face. I wonder where our move face is under here. Is there just a straight face command? All right, well, I can't find it, so we'll go up here to search commands, move face. I wonder if I can just go right from there. I know in the new one you can go right from there to straight to your S key. Does anybody know where it is? I know in 2022, oh, whatever, maybe I'm taking too long on this. I'll just add delete face onto here. All right, we'll go to surfaces. If anybody knows which menu this is in, let me know. I wonder if I could find it if I searched. Now I'm more just curious than anything else. Replace face, unpatch, surface pattern. Yeah, direct editing ribbon has all these too. Yeah, that's a good point, Matthew. All right, well, I'll save that as an Easter egg for another time. Insert face move. Of course, the other thing you could always do is right mouse button, recent commands, and then move face. If you're using a command over and over again, you could do it that way as well. So a lot of different ways you can get to the same command. We'll take this guy here and we're going to move this up at a distance of 10 millimeters. All right, so now that was moved up to 10 millimeters. Now we can roll forward here and we can see that all those changes are done. The final change that we have to do is to remove this final rib here. So now we just need to get rid of that rib down on the bottom. All the other changes were done. And so to do that final change, I'll just do S key delete face, since I just added delete face to my S key menu. And I'm going to delete this face. But a little trick that I've learned from a lot of experience with delete face is that a lot of times you have better luck if you kind of incrementally pick the faces you're going to delete. So what I mean is if I pick all these faces here and I hit the green check mark, it might work, but it also might not work. So sometimes what I'll do is instead of deleting them all at once, I'll go to delete face and maybe I'll just pick like these two and delete those. And maybe I'll just pick this one face and delete it. This sometimes gives you better results than trying to pick all the faces at the same time. In the case of this example, I know that the geometry is kind of simple, so I am able to get all the faces at once, but it's just kind of a good pro tip to remember. If you do this incrementally rather than all at once, sometimes you'll have better results. So now we would finish off by maybe going through and renaming all of our features by saving this model as a revision 2, and then by maybe making a drawing or whatever needs to be done, creating the the downstream manufacturing tools for this. So that's it for that part of the presentation, and I think that pretty much brings me to the end. I mean, I know, again, we only looked at one model, but we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about a little bit about templates. We talked about the idea of 3D interconnect. We talked about import diagnostics and FeatureWorks, and then we got into the main commands of the presentation: insert face delete, insert face move, measure within the status bar. Oh, hitting enter to repeat the last command, that's another good one. So if you're doing this incrementally, let's say you do insert face delete, and you say you're going to delete this face here, and you hit the green check mark. Well, now you can press enter, and enter launches the delete face command again. So now I'm in delete face again. Now I can maybe pick this face here, enter, launch it again. Now I could pick this face here, and then enter, launch it again. Now I could pick these final faces. So using enter to repeat the last command is another way that we can kind of shortcut that process. And so I want to say thank you all so much. Move face is under features. Yaya found it. All right, awesome. We got to definitely add that. So S key, right mouse button, customize. Love the S key. And we go under features here, features, and then we look for move face under here, and we can see that it is, let's see here, this one, move copy bodies, third row from the top. Here we go, move face, thank you. Move face, there we go. So now if at any point in the future we wanted to get in here and make a change, like maybe we wanted to make this radius a little bit bigger, we could do S key, we could do move face, pick this radius, we could say we want that to offset, and we want that offset to be 1 millimeter. And let's flip the direction on that, or we can make it a little smaller. Yeah, sometimes with fillets, it doesn't quite work out as well as you might hope. But you can see here that we can get in there, we can do move face. Of course, the other thing we could do is we could just do a delete face, right? Just like we did before, delete face, delete this face here, S key, fillet, get in here and make a new fillet, and then make it whatever size we want it to be. So that is the presentation. Mohammed, I'm sorry I ran over a little bit, but if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I hope that everybody enjoyed that. I hope you got a lot of good tips and tricks. You can always check out my YouTube channel, Too Tall Toby. Too Tall Toby is where I posted a lot of these kinds of tips and tricks, save you a lot of time. And we do a lot of other fun stuff on there too. One of the things we did that I thought was a lot of fun last year was we did a tournament where we allowed people to present their screens and actually create the same model at the same time. So 2 different people were presenting their screens and trying to create the same model at the same time. They were going through it, and challenging each other to see who could model it the fastest. So we do a lot of fun stuff over there on the Too Tall Toby channel. If you haven't been there, be sure to check it out. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mohammed. Any questions anybody has, feel free to either go on audio or to let me know in chat.
Yeah, thank you, Toby. Thank you so much. Appreciate your work. Good tips.
Good.
I just want to thank Toby for joining as well. I think one of the greatest things about the SolidWorks community, no matter how many exams you've taken through SolidWorks, I always learn something from somebody else. There's so many ways to do everything, and so many creative processes to dig into. A lot of fun watching your work today, Toby. Thank you.
Thanks. And thanks very much also to the chat. Appreciate everybody in the chat. Thanks Yaya. Thanks Travis. Thanks Mauricio. Thanks Krishna. Thanks Mohammed. Thanks Ishmael. Awesome. Good. Cool. Mohammed, did you learn anything?
Yeah, I learned a lot of stuff.
Good.
I'm definitely gonna use that for exams.
Good. Yeah.
Totally. The skills he's talking about are in exams. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like if anyone works with weldments, using that sketch strategy to develop complex weldment structures is very efficient. I
Yeah.
like cars, so like building a roll cage for a car, that is the best way to do it. Is with the
Yeah.
solid, convert entities into 3D, and now it's just tube weldments everywhere, and it does it in a fraction of the time of trying to draw it in 3D. It'd be a nightmare.
Yes. Yes.
So
I agree with you.
that's a
Yeah.
fist pump moment.
Nice. Yeah, and good for you know, also good for, you know, the any kind of like swoopy lofty guide curve. That's where I've used it a lot. I do a lot more like surfacing and swoopy lofty shapes, and you know, it's difficult to get that shape captured using 3D sketch. But if you can do it using 2D, you know, a lot of times you can get exactly what you want. So that's where I've ended up using it a lot. All right.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Okay, guys. Check the YouTube channel. You're gonna find like this video, and also the YouTube channel for Toby. Yeah, I find like you got like a Monday model live, I think.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start doing that soon. I'm in a little bit of a, I guess we call it a transition, right? Little bit of a weird spot right now. So, but I think I'll start again soon. Monday, maybe Monday. I got to figure out what a good time is. There are many people who watch from England and Europe and Africa. So I want to try to pick a good time that works for everyone.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Thank you for tuning in. We're gonna see you in the next week.
All
And
right.
also thank you. Yeah, see you later, guys.
All right. Thanks, Mohammed. Thanks very much for hosting.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you. Thank you. You do it well.